Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Dadas Show, coming to you straight from Wama, Africa, here in Nairobi. I'm your host, Ashiko Mbune. Now, COVID-19 caused and continues to cause a lot of distress globally. To curb the spread of COVID-19, the government ordered the nationwide close of schools and colleges. This has happened between March the 14th and 4th of January 2021. Now, when the schools resumed, to be able to salvage the lost time, the CS of Education unveiled a crash plan that involved 4 school terms. Okay, 3 in a school year, but from January to December, there were 4 school terms and even shorter holidays. Now, though unsubstantiated, many claimed that the unrest that was witnessed towards the end of last year with cases of arson in the schools was closely linked to the demands of this very engaging schedule. Now, philosopher George Santayana, who happens to be one of my favorite philosophers, says that those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. As we draw closer to the end of this crash program, being that we are on the final term of the year, what lessons, what's our big takeaway? What do we believe we have learned? And moving forward, what are the things that we actually really need to take into consideration? Before I introduce the panel that I have today with me to dig deeper into the psychological effects of the crash program, let's take a look at the following feature. And as always, I always welcome you to take part on all our social media platforms and keep these conversations going. The topic of today is the psychological effects of the crash program on students. We'll be right back.
The move by Ministry of Education to squeeze 3 academic years into 2 calendar years is taking a toll on both parents, teachers and students. This comes after COVID-19 pandemic led to closure of schools for 9 months and students who are candidates missing their national exams. In September 2020, Ministry of Education introduced a crash curriculum program upon opening of schools to enable them to recover the lost year. The crash program has forced parents to pay extra school fees following an additional term every year. In addition to that, parents with school-going children have to deal with high cost of living being experienced in the country and a curriculum that barely gives them time to make enough money to foot all school fees.
We used to know that after 3 months we pay fees, after 3 months we pay fees, but now it is like they come home 1 week, they're back in school. It's so confusing.
Time ya shule kufunguliwa ilikuwa very short. Pesa hakuna. Hata hatujatafuta pesa, unatuma tu mwanafunzi, unaongea na maybe principal akuwekele kwanza kidogo ndio at least upate do.
Parents with learners in boarding schools are required to travel to school to pick and drop them at any required time.
Fare imepanda sana. Sisi leo tunalipa 1000 na tunalipaga 500. Tumesinywa kidogo.
Na demand ikienda juu mpaka bei nayo ipande. Inaendanga tu hivyo kwa biashara. Kama saa hii sasa tumeongeza karibu 100%, from 500 tunacharge 1000.
In 2021, the demanding crash program has pushed secondary school students to the edge, resulting in a wave of unrest across the country. Poor national exam performance was also an outcome of the introduced school crash program. Buruburu Girls, Chavakali High School, Gendia Boys High School are some of the schools that were closed following a fire incident last year.
Use this platform first to appeal to all students of this nation that there is no amount of stress that can make you destroy millions of properties that have been put in our institutions. Any kind of stress can be sorted out by proper discussion with the administration.
In a move to reduce student distress, school heads called for introduction of half-term break and resumption of co-curriculum activities such as sports, drama festival and music festival, which had been suspended. Since the reopening of schools for their 3rd term in September, some students have failed to report back to school following the abolition of CDF for lack of school fees. As the cash program in schools come to an end this December, this will be a relief for both parents, students and teachers.
Challenge imekuwa kwamba fees imepanda na tena break imekuwa kidogo sana, such that we were not able to kupata pesa ambazo zilikuwa zilipe fees. Na kwa sababu hiyo tunawarudisha na madeni. We hope hawatarejeshwa nyumbani tena.
Welcome back. So joining me, as mentioned, is a wonderful panel. Right next to me, I have Madam Pamela Mukabana, who is the Deputy Principal of Kayole South Secondary School. Karibu sana. Next to her, I have Rebecca Opondo, who is a child therapist. And next to her, I think, which is the most key person of this panel, we have Miss Njeri, who is a former high school student. Thank you so much and for making time to join me on this panel. I also cannot fail to acknowledge my wonderful audience and for taking time away from their busy schedules to join me on the Dadas show as we dig deeper into these controversial issues. So to set the ball rolling, to start us off, Madam Pamela, as mentioned, we are drawing closer to the end of this crash year, the crash program. How has the past year been, actually maybe year and last year, been for you and your students?
Thank you so much for welcoming me on this show. It has been, I can say it has been a very difficult year, and even last year, especially with this crash program, because we've experienced a lot of difficulties in even teaching, fatigue, both from the teachers and the students, and especially the students. Teachers are mature people, they can manage these things, but the students were really fatigued. And it is true about what you said. The fires that started were because of the fatigue. Because remember, after that, we were given a leeway to now send students for midterm. Yes. And after that, it stopped.
It stopped.
Yeah, it stopped because then the students were sent home, they would go and rest, at least relax, and then come back ready to work again. But despite that, we still had a lot of psychological problems that affected the students because of this crash program. One, there was pressure for performance, yet there was no time. And remember, we didn't even have we didn't have the drama, the music festivals and all that.
Yes.
It wouldn't even work because there's no time. But still, there was not enough time to cover the syllabus. We know the students are in school for let me say 9 weeks. And within those 9 weeks, they're supposed to do 3 exams. There is what we call an opener exam. Maybe this young girl will expound on that. We give them an opener exam because we give them homework when they go home.
Yes.
Then we say, when you come, we're going to set an exam on what we've given you. So they have an opener, then they have a midterm, then they have end term exam.
In 9
so
weeks.
In the same term, but so we had to leave out an exam, one exam, so we had an opener and the end term exam. But even with that, remember, there's Form 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the Form 4s have to do the full papers. So what we did was, most of the schools, especially in my school, we were not doing the full papers because when you give students exams, especially the Form 4s, they'll take 3 weeks. 3 weeks to do, and that is a whole
practical.
Yes, you have to do. Yes, there's paper 1 English, there's paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, and so on and so forth. So you can see that the time even for covering this syllabus is so short. So the student has the pressure. Here is, you have to do this work, you have to cover this syllabus, and then you have to sit for the exam. The last exam we did was in April, isn't it?
Yes.
So I wouldn't even say that, I wouldn't blame any student for not having performed well because I know the pressure was too much for them. Yeah. And then, number 2, there's the mental health.
Yes.
These kids are coming from a situation where there's COVID. They've just been sitting at home doing nothing. Although there was a program by the ministry for us to teach online.
Yes.
But let me ask you, how many students can access online learning in Kenya? Remember, we have so many students.
Yes.
There are children from rural areas, and even there are children from even in Nairobi who can't access a phone, a smartphone. So they were not learning. We can't, hide our heads under the sand and say, oh, everybody was learning and so on. There are some students who never learned. So as a teacher, what do I do? When I go to class, there was this one who learned, yes, through online, and there was this one who didn't have access to it, and I have to make sure that both of them are at par.
Yes.
So even to the teacher, there was pressure to make sure that the students you're teaching are all at par, they all have got the material, they have the information to be able to perform well.
Thank you so much, Deputy Principal Pamela. And sorry to cut you short, but the mental health aspect of it is what is the meat of the show today. So, for instance, now over to you, Rebecca, as a child therapist, on your professional opinion, some of the things that Pamela has actually highlighted was the fact that they were home for 9 months. And then here they are, they've been thrown into this, this very, very demanding, very engaging schedule. Nothing like any of them have ever experienced. So what is the psychological effects on the students of for something like this, so that we can see maybe that is what attributed to some of the behaviors that we saw?
Thank you very much for inviting me in this show. And just to respond in the sense of this of point that you put on across, that the pressure was based on that change and COVID as it happened for the whole world. Maybe placing back in the sense of how we deal with our stress patterns. Again, I can imagine a period of laxity in terms of 9 months or so at home. Not everybody can engage in the e-learning. Some were doing other things that are school related. That's not nurturing the academic journey. So I can imagine for most people, it was an adjustment issue. So what happens with adjustment? So placing back into your stress pattern is, what are your needs at that particular point? Is it to study, or is it to ensure that you put a meal on your plate? And you can imagine even the parents were also affected. You can imagine they're supposed to regulate their children in this pandemic, and they're coming from a point of being overwhelmed. And I saw COVID coming as a cascade of possibly an avalanche of stresses, because from socio-economic, which is the financial aspect, it beats into even the relational aspect. It beats into this how you have interpersonal relations. So it went back to us. So how to fend for, because the isolation was quite there. The isolation was quite there. You trying to get a mile of what to do the next day. So I feel the children were most affected, because even the adults who were supposed to take care of them were in distress.
I believe you. I think we were dealing with something that we had never seen before, at least not in this generation. I know we're not, the last big plague was a black plague, and so we are dealing, everybody had to adjust. Yeah. Like Mwalimu said, as adults, sometimes we have our own little coping mechanism. But for kids, especially, teenagers. Now, speaking of teenagers per se, you were a student, Joy. And you not only did 1 year, you did the full Form 2, Form 3, Form 4, or Form 2, Form 3? Form 3, Form 4. Let me not speak on your behalf. Please tell us, how was this whole experience from you? Start from, because you did do a number of forms in the normal time. How was that transition? How did you deal with all of that, my dear?
Okay, thank you. The first thing that was really, a big issue for most people was the transition, honestly. The first few months after COVID, were where people struggled the hardest. As you said before, we've come from a place where we were just seated at home, you know. Some of us were privileged to have the e-learning and all that, but not everyone was able to access it. So you come from a place where you're not doing anything the whole day, and you go back to school, and the school has also changed the system. You're not learning the way you learned a few months ago because you have to cover the syllabus. So they've added extra hours. The time for preps has been increased. The time for waking up has been adjusted. You're waking up earlier, you're going to sleep late. Of course, it causes some kind of turmoil in your mind and in everything that you do. The functionality is not the same.
Like for instance, when you're saying they're adjusting, was it a regular adjusting, or it was something before? For let's say, what time were you expected to wake up?
Okay, so before that, we would wake up at around 5.
Yes.
That was the normal timing,
yes.
you know. But now you have to be, okay, we used to wake up at 5 and you're in class by 5:45. But we go back and the time has, it was adjusted by 30 minutes, but 30 minutes is also a lot. It's a lot of time.
Yeah.
And you're going to class earlier, you're not supposed to be in class by 5:15. You have to prepare, and the classes start earlier. Like a teacher comes in at 7, and beforehand the teacher used to come in at 8. So your time for personal studies is also interfered with, because you could study from 5:45 to 8, but now you're studying from that time to around 7, and between that period you also have breakfast.
Yes.
You also have the time for breakfast, you know. So obviously in your mind you're like, okay, the time for studying has been reduced. The teachers are going like double time to finish the syllabus, so you have more to read. You have more to read and you have less time to read it. You get?
Yes.
So it becomes, it definitely became an issue. At the same time, I also think, you know, during the time at home, truth be told, some people got into some things that were holding them back.
Yes.
Things like drug abuse and all that. During the 9 months is a lot of time, and an idle mind is the devil's workshop. You know, you have a lot of time and you have nothing to do. So a lot of people fell into a pattern of drug abuse and everything. So when some people came back to school, it was like some type of rehabilitation for them. You know, so a lot of them are struggling with, you know, you're struggling with rehabilitation. You are used to taking this certain drug that was keeping you up, keeping you lively. And also a lot of people witnessed a lot of things at home that they were not seeing before. Like when you're with your parents 24/7 and all that, truth be told, you get a different perspective from the one you had.
Yes.
When you're only at home for a month or for 3 weeks and then you go back to school. Now you're with them for 9 months. You see what, you know, the behind the scenes of everything that goes on at home. And for some people, okay, so for some people who, let's say, come from dysfunctional families, you know, now they are carrying that. They are carrying that, and they are, yes.
Yeah, they have the front row seats to that. So even just
Yes.
from the things that you have mentioned, my dear, I feel like even as adults, sometimes as we operate, we do not take into consideration the mental well-being of teenagers and adolescents.
Yes.
So for instance, like the COVID time was tough on everybody. And we know there are some marriages that did not even last. There are businesses that have collapsed. Everything, so much happened, you know, on the negative spectrum. And do you feel, Rebecca, as a child therapist, do you feel like when we've been talking about doing a prognosis of COVID, we have always talked about businesses that need to come and be saved, marriages that need this. We've touched on a number of things. Do we take teenage and adolescent mental health into consideration? Do you think that Kenyan schools, society, parents take their mental health as seriously as we should?
I think based on my experience working with adolescents, I think not so much keen was put into it until they went into school. So in my own practice, you could find that there have been given like leave out to come for counseling, and you're like, what is happening? And the thing is, now the symptomatic aspect comes where in these constricted institution and these places of socialization where they have to release, they have to express how it was for them. And now the ripple is now they know how just to express themselves by burning schools because they feel like they don't have any sense of independence when it comes to, we want the school to run like this. We know we are affected, but is there a leeway where you can put us into consideration and let's give thought of how we can get through this together? But it was handed down to them. And I can imagine in that particular age, they seem to want and they're drawn into a sense of independence.
Yes.
If they're excluded, they feel like their life are being controlled.
Retaliate.
Exactly.
Yes.
Their lives are being controlled. So that loss of that sense of forging into their independence is lost. And they feel like they have to react, not respond.
Yeah.
So even back to their developmental stages, and that's why you find during the 9 months, a lot of the youths were going back, and adolescents per se, a lot of them were socializing and they're finding solace with their fellow peers, not with their parents. You could find even the parents are inside the house, but they will rather not stay in the house and stay outside. And that's where you felt the misgap. The misgap is parents needed now to open a leeway to tap into where they are, draw themselves closer. And the thing is, if there's a gap there and they did not identify them, that's what the teachers are finding in school.
I like that because, I mean, I like the fact that sometimes when we do have discussions here on the Dadas show, we do go back to charity does begin at home. Because there was a lot of blame game, Walimu, you know, you bore witness, because the ministry was busy saying the parents, you stayed with these children for 9 months. You know, charity begins at home. You did not discipline them, etc., etc. Then we shift and then they say it is the schools, it is the minister, it is the what. Now, what measures, you know, and I know this is a little bit thorny at this moment, but what do you feel, and of course it's milk that has already spilled, what do you feel were some of the things that would have been put in place to be able to assist in this transition? Because it was rather obvious globally that kids have been home for 9 months. They're coming back and then they're coming back to school, even minus the regiment. There was already a transition problem. What do you feel should have been done? What are some of the measures that should have been taken to ensure that some of the unrest that we witnessed wouldn't have happened?
In my own thoughts, I think we should have done it the way Ugandans have done it. Well, the Ugandans took it easy. The students just stayed at home. Of course, I don't know what the parents were doing with them, but they stayed at home.
They have started
the year. If you are in, I think you are in class 4, you just go and start class 4 fresh. So the year goes on smoothly. But you see, here we were being put in a box. We have to finish. If you are in Form 1, in Form 2, you just must finish the Form 2 in that 2 terms. Like, and then if you're in Form 4, you just have to do, and then you do the exam. Yeah, it would have been relaxed in a way that we just go the normal way.
Yes.
You know why? Because after these students get out of school, you can ask some of them, they just sit at home. So what is the urgency? What was the urgency of them? Let's crash it. Let's get out. What are you going to do? Because after that, they go to university, they get their degrees, and then they sit at home. They have no jobs.
I mean, so I think a lot of emphasis, yes.
It doesn't make sense, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we'll just have taken it slowly, then go it slow, and, you know, for us just to have a normal life and all that. You know, and as they were blaming the parents, of course I do blame some parents because they, as she rightly put it, there were gaps which they did not fill in. So this is the idea of parents who never used to sit with the children.
Our Juani.
Our Juani. So they are wondering, what do you do with these kids? So when they go out to play, they're even happy that they're going out to play.
Yeah.
When they came back to schools, some of us, what we did was to do counseling, a lot of it. Like in my school, we have a very strong counseling team. The teachers worked. Because girls in my school is mixed.
Yes.
We have boys.
That presents its own set.
And we have a very huge population.
Yes,
we have 6 streams.
Wow. wow.
We have, but we have separated them.
Yes.
We have 3 girls streams, 3 boys streams. So you can imagine the work the teachers were doing.
That's a huge
Because
work.
a child comes, they have, they have issues, And then it also had an effect with the parents' pocket.
Yes.
You see, now there's a crash program. The parent has to, within 1 week, the parent has to come up with the money. Every other week. Until I remember there was an incident where a parent came and told me, Mwalimu, nimeuza my meko. And this is all I have. Because she left, right, and center, there's nowhere else she will get. COVID has hit her. She's a single parent, and there's nothing she could do. So that meant already she has mental issues. And she cannot be able to help her child in that one. What she is thinking about is the child just going to school, not also trying to help the child mentally. So I wish that we would have gone it slow and taken it slow at a time, because we missed out even on the kids playing. They were not, they were not supposed to go out and play.
They were not supposed to go out. They were not supposed to do so much, madam. And that is the thing that I think those are some of the thoughts that jump. But I mean, obviously, right now, there's really nothing much we can do about it.
True.
But I think going forward, some very crucial questions like, what is the rush? It may sound very mundane, but those are some of the things that should have been asked.
True.
So on that note, we're going to take a very small break, and then we'll come back and dive deep into the question and answer session. So we'll see you in a bit.
Welcome to Wama Africa, located on Mthangari Road in Lavington. Wama is a social enterprise restaurant, bar, and function space which trains young adults living with disability and special needs. Wama is open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner from 8 a.m. till late, 7 days a week. Walk-ins are welcome.
Mimi naitwa Frederick Kutsua, aka najulikana kama Freddy. Mimi naweza sema venye hii crash program imetuaffect sana, cause mtu kama mimi na support my sibling, na my sibling yako form 3, na unapata kuko na venye hatukuwa tumejipanga kulingana na venye hii imekam, una get. So imetupata design yenye tuko so much affected, ile design yenye nilikuwa nimeplan venye naweza saidia kulipa fee ya huyu bro yangu, but kuna venye imekuwa difficult juu design. Mimi nilikuwa nimeplan ile design ya 844, but unapata hii venye imekam, hii program venye imekam imetuaffect sana design yenye zenye nilikuwa nimeplania haziwezi make sense juu saizi tumepatwa offside.
My name is Dr. Titus Mboma, and I just want to contribute on this issue of crash programs of schools today. I think it's very difficult. Yeah, I feel it's very difficult, and I see it's very difficult. First of all, parents cannot plan for their finances. Yeah, it's not easy to plan. Because if you plan and you're told a student has to come home, especially with a student in a boarding school, you have to prepare. And actually, it's not just about money. It's about the security of the children on the roads. We've seen some students crash in buses and die. If they were in school, they wouldn't have incurred such accidents. So those parents with students in boarding schools are really feeling it. And I know even those even not in boarding school are really feeling it, financial-wise and also for the security of children.
I wish schools zingeelewa that parents wanapitia hali ngumu na hiyo program imechangiwa. Some schools hazielewi, unaambiwa you have to clear school fees. Naona unapewa hiyo pressure, like school ziko karibu kufunga, you have to clear school fees. Now say maybe schools in term inakuwa na 2 months. 2 months unaambiwa uclear hiyo school fees. Tell me, labda una depend kwa salary ya end month. it's crazy. I just wish that schools pia zingeelewa wakuwe a bit flexible, waelewe the way things are. It's not easy for us as parents. Hata wanafunzi imewapea pressure sana. So we are hoping from January things will be okay and we go back to normal so that at least we can breathe.
Welcome back to the question and answer session. As always, we do love to hear from you, so keep commenting about today's episode, keep discussing what are the highlights that you've picked out, what do we need to change, and keep us engaged on KBC Channel 1. So to start us off on the question and answer session, we have Mr. Hamlet.
Thank you for having me. So mine is short. As much as mine was tough during the COVID-19. Yeah, so as much as COVID-19 disrupted the education sector, it also fed negativity to the minds of the students. And the moment you start feeding your mind with negativity, it ruins your positivity. So what I'm trying to say is that the COVID-19, it brought a lot of negativity to the students' minds. Yeah. So the moment the student starts feeling like he can't be able to make it, he can't be able to understand the basic things that is being taught by the teacher, maths, English, he or she will start thinking negatively about education. So they will have to maybe start thinking about other things, maybe starting businesses, something like that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Hamlet. So the next question or comment is coming from Madam Victoria.
As you heard earlier, my name is Victoria Mugore. I'm studying actuarial science, second year at Multimedia University. And for me, I'm a repeater. I did my first Form 4 in 2019 and then went back in 2020. And at the beginning it was easy, it was good until COVID hit and we had to go home. And during that time I thought initially that we would only go home for 2 weeks, and the waiting game started. Like I think it was very torturous, just not knowing when you're going back. And of course I had an opportunity to pursue maybe a diploma, and in that moment I remember thinking maybe I should just quit. I contemplated it a lot, and I thank God for my teachers. They really held my hand because we had some online classes, and I remember talking to my teachers, telling them I might not be coming back, and they were like, "No, you come so far to just stop now," So I thank God for that support system I had, and then we went back. Obviously, it was such a short time to do a lot. So, and you've mentioned that we should have just, what was the rush? We should have just waited. And obviously for someone like me, I was like, let's go. I just want to finish this my second Form 4 and just be done. But now that you've mentioned it, it was probably better to wait. Yeah, not to rush it. Obviously, it would have been better for me if I rushed, but looking at the bigger picture. So I think I'm so glad to be in this panel because of that, and so.
Thank you so much, Victoria. That's actually, let's give her a round of applause, because that's actually very encouraging, to see someone who wants to try again. If the first time around, maybe she did not get the grade that she wanted, she went back in the face of all this adversity, and she still got it done. So I think sometimes we do not give our teenagers and our adolescents enough credit for the effort that we put. We like to sideline them and put them aside and think that we can make all sorts of decisions for them. Let's hear one more story from Tracy. Hi, Tracy.
My name is Stacy. I'm at Dadas University, currently doing psychology. And during the crash course, I will say that my mental health was mostly affected because of the pressure, the uncertainty, because when we went back, we didn't know what was happening at home. We just knew COVID is still there. We don't know how our parents are. We are hearing the death toll is rising. So the uncertainty and the pressure personally affected me, and I got anxiety because I was like, what's gonna happen? What if we get sent back home? So actually, and I think that anxiety during that time pushed me to do the current course that I'm doing in psychology, because I felt like our mental health were so neglected because nobody cared, like, how are you actually faring? Like, are you really okay? So, yeah.
Thank you so much. And that is a call to anybody who is watching, you know, because and that is coming out so strongly, isn't it? Because we always thought that we were the ones who were carrying the weight of the world because we're the ones who pay the bills, and we're the ones who are going to work, and we're the ones who the marriages are failing and the businesses are failing. But we did not sit down and think, these people who we've brought forth into this world, how are they feeling? How are they feeling? Because I can imagine I had anxiety, deep anxiety when it came to the rising death toll numbers. And that time you have people around you. What about them? And they've been sent to school. So they don't know how the family is faring. And COVID was unpredictable. It can come, it can get one person, it can get 10 people. Yeah, so I think those are some of the things that when we look back, we really need to be grateful that we've gotten to where we are. We're going to take one more question from Anita.
Okay, asante sana. Kwa majina naitwa Anita Wanjiko. I'm a parent. Nilikuwa nataka kuuliza Madam Principal, kama ume experience, kuna watoto wenye juu ya pandemic waliingia kwa business, wakaanza kufanya biashara. Sasa ikifika msimu wa kurudi shule, ikakuwa difficult kwao. Mumehandle aje wa watoto?
That's a very, very, very good question. Yes, we had students who, as I said, I'm in a day school. So we had students who got into business, serious business, border. Those ones who started in Kokoteni and even making mandazis. But for me, I looked at it positively because it's innovation, isn't it? If a child can think, instead of taking drugs, and they can go and start, they can decide they have a mkokoteni, they're pushing maybe things for people and they're being paid, that's a good thing. We actually have a student who does that. We encourage him because his parent is sick and he has to take care of his mother. So he does that after school. He goes and pushes the mkokoteni and does some little work and gets something to eat with his mother. So yes, there were students, but there are those ones who refused to come to school. After COVID, we had dropouts from school. Those ones who didn't want, I think they found business too sweet to continue with it, so they did not come. Because we usually call, when a student doesn't come to school, we keep calling the parent. But you see, you can take a horse to the river to drink.
But you cannot force it to drink,
isn't it? Yeah, so yes, we had those instances. And we mitigated, we did a few things to call them back. Those who came back. Those who refused, we left them like that. But it is, for me, it's something positive. Although those ones who refused to come back should just have come back to school and continued, you know.
Liwe liwalo.
Yeah.
Waendelee. Yeah, thank you so much, Pamela. We have one more question from Maureen.
Thank you, Maureen. On the comment that, I have a comment that despite that the fact that it has, that COVID-19 period has had a lot of psychological effect, we were able to, most of us were able to be open-minded that anything can happen anytime in life. It's not the way we've always been programmed to do. Like you wake up in the morning, you need to have breakfast, lunch, and supper. No, anything can happen in just a twinkle of an eye. So like it has been an eye-opener that beyond education, I'm not suggesting that we do away with education or anything. No, that beyond the education program, if we are not in school as students, we are outside here. What impact are we making to the society? If at all anything can happen. So everything, it's not about being in school, being in books. No. If we are out there, if we are not doing schoolwork, if we are outside, then we should also impact the society outside there. Most of the students who are there, like doing different programs. If you are doing, maybe if you are a social worker, if maybe you are doing education, you could even meet people in the, maybe for example in plots, students, if you are taking course in education, you are able to help out in assignments work or extra curriculum work in just within the place you are at. And I saw that's something positive again.
Thank you so much, Maureen. That's extremely encouraging, you know. I think in every situation, if it's possible, you can be able to look at the lemonade from the lemons. I believe, I don't want to use, like I said earlier, I don't want to use the word upside, but I'm saying some opportunities that did present themselves with the COVID pandemic was obviously a moment of introspection. It's a moment of sitting down and reflecting and saying, if this has not worked. And it's good to see that it would not just fall within the age brackets of an adult, where you do have, if you do not adopt, you will die. So it's happy to see even the young ones, even hearing that there are kids who, you know, who have got into ventures. I know that there's some of them who started selling the movies, started taking advantage. And to be honest, that's the kind of Kenya that we want. We don't want people who just think linear. You want people who are going to be able to take an opportunity and make the best of it and, you know, and run. But of course, there were obviously the downsides. Now, I want to ask you one final question, Joy. What are some of the telltale signs? Remember, as parents, sometimes we can be faulted and maybe we just don't know. You know, maybe we just don't know. So for our viewers watching, who are parents who are watching, who are noticing that, hey, you know, you don't interact a lot with the kids. So you go to work. Remember, in the society we are living, you go to work in the morning, you come back in the evening. You see them during the weekend. Remember, like what Pamela said, it's a very short period of time. So you don't even know this guy. You don't even know the child. So, for instance, what are some of the telltale signs for a teenager or an adolescent from what you've observed? And then we will find out the professional, you know, the professional look, yeah, of someone who is depressed or anxious.
Well, first of all, to recognize and acknowledge some of the pointers that someone is going through something mentally, we have to come to terms with the fact that mental health matters are real, depression is real, anxiety is real. As a country, as a continent, I feel like there's still that notion that things like depression and all that, those are Western diseases. You get, like, over here, let's say you'll be depressed, and a parent will tell you it's because you're on that phone every day. It's because you are not praying anymore.
Guilty.
There's like a lot of things. So the first thing that, you know, as teenagers, as people as young adults, the first thing we face is the difficulty of explaining to a parent, you know, like if your parent is not someone who is woke in a sense, you won't know how to approach that topic, you know. You'll stay in bed the whole day, your eating will become worse, or okay, you won't want to eat, or you will want to eat a lot. Exactly. Like you'll either lose your appetite or your appetite will double, and you'll become withdrawn from, you know, some of the things that you used to do. Like you used to be social, you're not social anymore. I remember I went through that where I'd stay in my room the whole day. And at that time, you know, my mom was at home the whole time, but my dad was at work, you know. So I didn't feel like I had the space to open up and to tell them this is what I'm going through. So yeah, that's one thing parents should be aware of, that mental health issues are real, and also school, because we have counselors, we have school counselors, and I think a lot of students out there would agree with me that some of these counselors, they don't understand, they don't get you. They will say that they have gone through the training, they get, you know, what you're going through, but in real sense, they don't. So a lot of people don't want to go, they don't want to go see a counselor because they say they'll be judged. You know, you can't tell them, this is what I did, and this is where I need help, you know, because you feel like they will judge you. That's another thing. But at the same time, I think, you know, the whole process, it helped a lot of adults realize that these things are real. Personally, the school I was in, after some time, when we came back, you know, after some time, they realized that some people were really going through deeper issues than that teachers could not help with. You'd be told, go talk to a teacher so-and-so is available, but there are just some things that are beyond what they have studied, beyond what they know. So they started sending, as she said before, they started sending people to counselors. Your parent would be called and they'd give you suggestions to go to a certain counselor who you'd see, and you'd have to come back with a report, you know. So I think the thing that we need to be very aware of, first of all, is that these things are real and they happen. And things like suicide and all that, they stem from not having someone you can talk to, and parents not spending, you know, as she said, as Madam Pamela said, not spending enough time with their children. You know, some parents really don't know their kids, and that's why some children cannot open up to their parents. You can't talk to someone you don't know, and when you talk to a peer, you'll try to find coping mechanisms, but they don't really help.
Some of those coping mechanisms may not even be the healthiest.
Yes, they're not healthy.
Like
some of them are not healthy.
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah.
So if you create a safe environment where your kid can come talk to you and you can figure it out together, that would be the best thing to do. And also be very aware of everything that your child is going through.
Thank you so much, Joy. I think that's such a deep insight. If we're just still reflecting on that, what would be the best approach? This is the Dadas show. We are women, we are mothers, we are sisters. What would be the best approach when we are talking about mental health in teenagers? As a mother, as an auntie, as a sister? Because not all the time, like she said, at that particular moment, she did not feel like the environment was good enough to discuss with mom. But there's auntie, there's kuzo, you know, all these women around you. What would be the best approach for us women and the women and the dadas who are watching at home to create a safe environment for a teenager to come and talk to you?
Maybe I can start with how do we fall back to that person who we feel safer to?
Yes.
And we have to just analyze psychological safety. Where you can pinpoint you safer psychologically, that's where you go. And it stems from a point of regulation. And where do I come from? You're only regulated if your stress responses can actually predict, can actually accommodate moderation. That's where you can regulate your stress responses. And if you have people you can rely on, relations are very important when it comes to how we regulate ourselves. Then again, we look at our reward system. What am I getting? How does that person make me feel? That feeling of acceptance, that's reward. That's reward. So if your stress responses are well at par and you have a functional interaction with it, you have people who are welcoming and you have a good relation with other people, then the reward is the plus of it. So you can jump out of regulation and in regulation. That's where you can deal with stress well. So back to your response is, how do we deal with that? How do we reach out to that person? We have to first analyze what are these motivational aspects towards us trying to reach out to this person, and what are these restraining forces that are making us not reach out to this other person, because that identifies our needs. That's identifies our needs. Back even to the parent. The parent is, your child will not express themselves if you're not an expressive parent. We call that co-regulation. If you're a person who can communicate well, then they will, it's an aspect of socialization. They're going to need mentors. They're going to look for someone who to model. And that's a key important thing when it comes to change. Even when it came to COVID, if the parents or the grown-ups who we think that they know to do whatever they do, if they took it in a better front and be like, you know what, this is family time. Let's make use of this. What do we need to do for our family to strengthen the front? No family is functional. Even in the dysfunction, you can rise even to the occasion. No relationship is flawless. Even in that realm, you can rise towards the occasion. And just analyzing that, you have each other's back and you continue refilling each other's possibly reward bucket by checking up on each other. That's actually nurturing the relation. Check on this other person. And also, the aspect of now bringing these things into one front is, by the end of the day, we also have to check ourselves, checking ourselves. As she mentioned, finding out resources that are outside our coping skills. And that calls us to be more proactive. In as much as the emotional aspect of our coping skills, you might cry, that will solve for the short time. How about the long time? How about the long time? Maybe I can go to that auntie who actually listens to me, that can bridge me to my mother, who might actually fund my counseling, or actually bring in or steer on into your hobbies. Because other than school, she mentioned, other than school, what else can that person show up for themselves without that social structure of it's school, then something else? And it comes from a point of nurturing. I say nurturing is where the foundation is at.
Oh, so if I'm hearing you correctly, we are talking about, I've picked something out from what you have said about if we do want to create an environment, teenagers or adolescents will share with somebody who shares back.
Yes.
So I think sometimes some form of vulnerability, letting them in. Because I know, even for me and most of my peers, growing up, we saw our parents as demigods, and they were perfect. And there was nothing that they could ever do wrong. So even when you did feel like you had a problem, you did not feel, your first response was not, let me go and talk to mom, or let me go and talk to dad. Because as far as you were concerned, these people do not make any wrongs. Now, as generations are changing and times are changing, I think some things we also do need to adapt to the changing times. We've been talking about how emotionally in touch the youth of today are. So I think it is important sometimes as parents, as teachers, to open up a little bit and get vulnerable with them so that they can be able to relate to you on a human-to-human basis. Mwalimu, let us close the show for us, because we cannot cry over spilled milk. Whatever has happened has happened. But moving forth, because despite COVID, there have been instances where we have noticed that mental health in adolescents and teenagers is being ignored. Moving forth, what are some of the things that we should start putting in play?
Yeah, as I was telling you, there are a lot of things teachers do, but we have not done enough. We have to do more. We have to be more closer to our students. As you say, let us open up to them, let us be vulnerable to them. I try to do that a lot, and I see a lot of girls coming to me, telling me things. They tell me what they're going through, which I like because I try to help them out of it. Yeah, I've had several students who are suicidal, but with time, I've seen they're improving. I call the parents, we talk with them, and I tell the parent, do you know that your child was suicidal? They get shocked because the parent also doesn't understand. So yes, as teachers, we will do more. And now that this crash thing is getting fixed, thank God, we are going back to normal life. It will not be easy because the trauma is still there, the mental issues are still there, but we are going to try our best Because they're resting, and then the involvement in co-curricular activities, music is coming, drama is coming, sports is coming. It's going to help our young students to cope with life. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam, and thank you so much for everybody on my wonderful panel. Your input was, it was very illuminating, and I thank you so much, even for the questions that came from the panel. Thank you so much. I believe everybody who is living here is living today having known something, having acquired something, an insight or two about one matter or the other, and even for you at home. So we have come to the end of this episode of the Dadas Show. Now, according to a report by the World Health Organization, it is estimated that 1 in every 7 10 to 19-year-olds suffer from mental health. We can no longer just, stick our heads in the sand. We cannot play ostrich. I like how Madam Pamela had said it earlier. We cannot play ostrich anymore and pretend that mental health is not a key factor in adolescents and teenagers. Perhaps motivated from the crash program, perhaps motivated from just life in general. So as parents, as teachers, as society, it's up to us to be very cognizant of some of the things that she did mention as telltale signs. We've come from a very, very difficult period with everything that comes with the distress that comes with COVID. So the task is to you at home, with a teenager at home with you, or in school, or a neighbor. Are you noticing something? Do you feel like you can step in? For the dadas at home, we always applaud, create an environment. Be vulnerable with them so that they can be able to be vulnerable with you. So on behalf of my production team at KBC, my fantastic location partners, Wama Africa, and of course the full team and everybody who has made time to be here, and myself, I thank you so much for tuning in, and I wish you all a lovely week. I'll see you same time, same place next week on the Dadas Show. Bye-bye.